Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. As an announcement, I hope that you will be with us on the 25th of May for Shavuot night. There will be food. There will be sparks of Torah happening. Great. So between last week and this week, more people are in the waiting room. Get those in. I asked folks if we could read the Eisen piece so that we could talk about it a little bit. Is that good? Okay. Ready? So I want to talk about in the first paragraph how he talks about the sense of relation of
Which page are we? I'm getting lost.
49.
49? Okay, thank you.
The sense of relation or proximity to God in my experience has been far from constant. I'm going to say that again. The sense or relation or proximity to God in my experience has been far from constant. So this is a person who, dedicated his adult life to teaching Judaism, first at Stanford and then at the Jewish Theological Seminary as its chancellor. What he's saying is, God's not always there for me. And then he continues, then all at once I do. I do experience God all at once, which is so interesting that he chose this particular, sensing God in a course where we're talking about mitzvot. And so that's my question. Why do you think we need to talk about God when thinking about mitzvot? And then I'm going to tell you what I think is very odd about the way JTS is named. Why are we bringing up God?
The creator of the universe. And everything that we do and get and pass on comes from there.
Okay, but I guess what I would say is, Mike, I think it's great that you feel that way. And you are like the ancient rabbis, where he says, for the rabbis, this aspect of the covenant, God's presence, was of course self-evident. And what Eisen is saying is God's presence in this world for most Jews is not self-evident. And I would imagine that is a truth for most of the people on this Zoom. God's presence in the world hasn't always been self-evident, nor is it at all times. So, is he talking about God here in such a starkly honest way, right? It's honest. He's saying, look, I devoted my life to the Jewish people. And the ancient Israelites, probably the ancient rabbis, not Israelites, the ancient rabbis felt God's presence, and I haven't always.
Maybe they didn't always either.
Yeah. That, I feel like his Hava Amina, his original statement, is a little faulty, because I don't think that humans today, I don't think we're that different. Meaning, I think people doubt it. I think that's why we have stories like the story of Elisha ben Abuya in the Talmud. Stories of people who just don't believe, or stories of heresy, or stories of people who just walk out. Yeah, Eleni.
It also changes over time. I mean, sometimes you feel one way and another time you feel another way, and that seems more true to life's experience and reality.
Yes.
Has that been true for you?
Of course. Of course, you make a leap of faith at some times, you ask questions at other times. Although I've never embraced certainty. I've embraced learning and questioning and discussing. But for me personally, I just am more comfortable resting in a place of not knowing. I think that's just more honest for me.
Yeah, and I want to say I'm just a one personal comment that I feel like you came by that honestly, that there's that one piece that we have in common of having gone to that school that we went to was a school that wanted to teach the ambiguity and wanted us to live in the gray area, or at least.
So yes, right, to live authentically. So yes, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rabbi Mara.
No,
Agreeing with you.
yeah, no, I'm saying that how we learn Judaism, there's a line in, Hanach lanar al pi darko, teach a child in their youth and they may continue. What we learn in religious school or in day school or wherever, or in synagogue, it often sticks with us. One of the things I say to teachers, which is, maybe Gila, you said this too when you were principal, don't teach stuff that we have to unteach later.
Right.
So if a teacher walks in to a classroom of third graders and says, I believe that God wrote the Torah in these discrete words and letters, which, by the way, I don't believe. And they're saying that because that's what they think they're supposed to say. The kid will know they're not being authentic or truthful. And B, then we have to go and unteach something later. And later, and then in 7th grade or 9th grade or college, we have to say, actually, there are lots of things that people believe, lots of different ways that people believe the Torah got to us. So
I would say that to the 3rd grader. That would be my answer to him.
what would you say?
I will say that answer. I'm not going to wait for the 7th grade. I will say this to the 3rd grader. Who will say that, listen, there are all kinds of people believe in all kinds of things, and one of them are what you said, and others are not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly what we're saying, that we think it's better to teach authentically, A, what we believe, and B, that there's lots of things that Jews believe. Yeah. Okay. Elliot. Yeah.
Well, let Elliot go first because
Okay,
I'll go
Elliot.
after him because he didn't speak it.
Sometimes I became upset with God as a doctor because I would see things and say, how could God let this happen to, like, especially to a child or something like that? And then I would say, well, the answer is maybe I just don't understand, or none of us really understand. But then it confirmed in me that I was even angry about it, that I still believed. I believed it. My anger was that there was something to get angry about. So it still confirmed my belief. But I remember that as being kind of shocked at my feeling about that.
Yeah, and I want to respond to it. I want Eleni to go, and then I'm going to respond to it.
I was just going to add very, very briefly that for me, and I imagine for many of us here, these beliefs aren't operating in a vacuum. It's not like I'm sitting in my room with the door shut and I'm thinking about whether I believe or not. It's so much in our tradition to be in community and to wrestle with these questions with each other. And what do you think? And oh, I didn't think of it that way. And oh, this one's going to give me another entry into it. So for me, belief or ideas in general, they're very much in conversation with others. And that's one reason I show up, even when I, have no idea how to think about these things.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece that you want your view to be also the views that are somewhat influenced by the community, or to be learning from other people. And
I think it's our tradition. We wrestle with ideas in chavruta, in community.
right.
The Talmud is a 1,000-year conversation. So, I want to be part of it.
right. And that's so the part of this conversation. So I'm going to go back to Elliot for a second and say, I feel like I wish every doctor would ask that question, but maybe be able to think about it through the lens of theology, through the lens of what do I think about God and how God works in this world. For those of you who were in shul last Friday night, I announced that there was a death of a mighty teacher of Judaism. A Gadol Hador died last week. Rabbi Harold Kushner,
Yes.
who wrote that beautiful text, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, after his son was born with progeria and died at age 13. And he used his own experience to think through, what do I believe about God? How do I observe mitzvot? Why do I observe mitzvot? And how does that relate to what I think about God? And so I ask again the question of, why do you think that Eisen put in his book called Taking Hold of Torah, and in his curriculum, he was the one who had this curriculum written? Why this conversation about God when talking about mitzvot? Yeah, Bob Karp, are you jumping in?
Well, yes, I think being a non-believer makes it easier. I don't see myself as an atheist or agnostic. I'm just a non-believer. It doesn't influence me one way or the other. I don't ever get into a discussion challenging people's beliefs. And I'm very pleased that no one ever has challenged my non-belief either in a Jewish setting. Although I've heard people say, well, I can't be Jewish, I don't believe in God. That they must have some other reason for not wanting to be a God belief. But I do have faith. And I think there's a difference between having faith and having belief. I don't have to believe any of this to understand what I am commanded to do. And I have faith that there's something called black holes. I guess I wouldn't call it belief. Someone tells me they're black holes, and I guess they're black holes, if that's what they say. In any case, it doesn't affect me. I do remember the death of a child. It was very, unfortunately, well, the kind of profession, being ambulatory care, I had very little. I remember all the children who died in my care, actually, 7 or 8. I remember them all very well. I remember as a resident, there was this Hasidic child with leukemia. His name was Abe, and he was like a preteen, and he was studying. And I said, Abe, do you want to go to the playroom? He said, my life is to study. And he died the next day. And well, that was meaningful to him, and I would never, ever, ever want to take that away from someone else, ever.
Beautiful. And I'm glad we can all be in conversation and say, wait, Myra, give me 1 second. I just want to sort of reflect on one thing that Bob said, which is there used to be a joke about the Jewish Theological Seminary, which was, it would be the one place in America where you'd never talk about theology. And it was true. Even when I was there, there was like, I mean, it's not true now, But when I was an undergrad, there was this one professor, Rabbi Dr. Neil Gilman. Any of you've had a chance to study with Rabbi Gilman, blessed memory. And that was the class, intro to theology. And that would be the class that every undergrad would take. And he would kind of destroy your theology if you came in with a theology of God wrote the Torah in discrete words and letters. And hopefully you'd take him long enough to help, you'd stay with the class and he could help you build up a theology that you actually believed in. Or you did have that faithful theology, although I don't know many people that did, and that sustained you. And then you'd be able to talk about how for decades it was called the Jewish Theological Seminary, but we didn't talk about theology. Instead, we studied Talmud. And the real reason is what Eleni said, because it doesn't matter to the performance of a mitzvah, technically, if you actually believe or how you believe in God. It matters that you do the actions, that you do these commandments. It doesn't matter who you think commanded them. Meaning, some Jews, and some Jews on this Zoom, believe that there's a mitzvah. Like, right? How do you have a mitzvah without a mitzvah? That there's a commander who commands these words and actions. And that's okay if you believe that. And some believe that they are a commander, a commander commanding these mitzvot. And some of us on this Zoom believe that these are folkways, in the words of our teacher, Mordechai Kaplan of blessed memory. That mitzvot are the folkways of the Jewish people. And everything in between. And in the end, like Eleni said, and like Bob said, it doesn't matter what we believe. Writ large, it matters what we do. At least according to how Jewish community is constructed. It matters that we do Bikor Cholim, visiting the sick, and it matters that we do name the mitzvah. Tefillah, so that there's a minyan for people who want to do tefillah. It matters that we build a mikvah. It matters that we have kosher food available. Not that any one individual believes in any one certain way, which is an incredible way to live and think about mitzvot. That we could live within community. And some of us do these mitzvot, qua mitzvah, as a commandment, because we feel commanded. And some of us do it because we feel like these are the folkways of the Jewish people. And some of us do these things because this is how we feel a sense of community. Yeah. Yeah, Eleni? Wait.
Let Rini go first. She didn't
Yeah,
talk.
I think
Rini,
Myra wanted to
Najat,
say
Eleni.
something before I did. Did you want to say something, Myra, before I did?
Yeah, well, I was trying to answer the question of why Eisen put the statements in this
Yeah.
course. And I think for me, it was a bit eye-opening to hear him say that he had doubts of belief.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, somebody of his stature, who was head of JTS, saying that was kind of a wow moment. However, I think including this in the course is also a way for us to possibly develop our own spirituality or our own connection to the divine through doing mitzvot. So I'm linking that with it's an opportunity to do the mitzvot and also to enhance our own belief from where these mitzvot were given. And sometimes that happens like just believing, sometimes it doesn't. it's swallowing it without thinking about that, but sometimes it can be. And it feels good to do a mitzvah that will benefit others or enhance our sense of being part of a community. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm,
included it.
yeah, thank you. So in other writings of his and in the rest of this book, Eisen teaches that another definition for mitzvah means commandment. That's what it means. You don't, that's what it means. A good deed is what our friends in the Reform movement helped teach in a good way. One of the things I try to teach our kids is that all good deeds fit into some category of mitzvot, but there are mitzvot that are not good deeds, right? Shatnez, not mixing fabrics or lighting Shabbat candles at a discrete time. All the ritual stuff, they're not good deeds. So all good deeds are mitzvot, but not all mitzvot are good deeds. Eisen, I think, building on Kaplan, who thought about mitzvot as folkways, right? From the anthropological point of view. Are there any anthropologists on? Yeah, so from an anthropological point of view, these are the folkways, the Jewish people. And I think Eisen, as a sociologist, came at it and said, you know what, actually, mitzvot are Jewish actions. Mitzvot are the actions that make up the Jewish community by virtue of we are all doing them together. Okay, other people wanted to talk and then we'll go on. There were more people. I knew Najat had wanted to speak. Did you?
Rini had her hand up too.
No, Rini and Najat had at the same time.
Rini, go ahead.
Okay.
Mike,
I
Rini,
was
Najat, Mike.
Okay, I was going to agree with everyone who said that the commandment is the important thing. But I think one of the reasons the commandments are there is that we are a doing people. So if you do them, after a while, they become meaningful. If you keep kosher, and you have to work at it. It's not so easy. It's much easier not to keep kosher. So if you keep kosher and you're working at it, it becomes something that becomes meaningful and part of your Jewish life. Lighting candles, all those things that are commandments. And even if you don't think that that there is a spiritual being, whatever, who told you to do that, it still becomes I don't want to say holy act, but it becomes a meaningful, they become meaningful acts and bring you closer spiritually to something, even if you don't believe in God. It certainly brings you closer to the Jewish people because we're all doing the same thing.
Right, maybe it brings you closer to a sense of peoplehood. I got you, Bob. I have you after Mike. And I'm so glad that you feel that sense of dveikut, that sense of closeness and spirituality. And I also recognize that there are people who try mitzvot on and don't feel that way. So I'm glad that you've had that experience. I know Ellen has had that experience with kashrut for a long time. Ellen has that experience putting a talit on. That's another mitzvah. But not everyone has. And what I'll sort of put out to you is that's my goal with you all, to try to ask you how we can invite more people into trying mitzvot on and having them bring their performance of mitzvot, bring some meaning to their lives. So that could be the creation of community and divorce a sense of relationship with God from it, if need be, or a sense of feeling God's presence and anything in between. So Najat was next, and then Mike, and then Dr. Bob.
Hi, everyone.
that.
What a beautiful topic to discuss. I'm very happy. And I wanted to react and share with you my own experience regarding this idea of believing in God or not. I grew up atheist, never believed in God, not even as a child. And it never really made sense because I was trying to rationalize it and I was analyzing it with my logic, right? And what happened with me is that one day I discovered I was Jewish. And then I started to believe in God, not because I rationalized it, but because I felt it. It was just there. It was more of a feeling, right? And the rest of it, I see it as a whole package. It's a culture, it's a community, it's a family, it's a language, it's a philosophy. And the fact that debate is so central to Judaism makes it even more enjoyable because it's not a set of rules that I just have to swallow. I can actually think about what I'm doing, and I'm still learning. I'm at the beginning of my learning experience, but I do it with a lot of awareness and sense of community, and I understand what's going on behind the mitzvot. So far, so good. I mean, I take, I don't know if I take everything, but at least I take the best of what I take. And I don't need to believe in it. It's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of incorporating the wisdom into my lifestyle.
Of doing and being. So
Yeah.
beautiful. So let me ask you, how do you not then see mitzvot as rules? Because you just use the word that it's not rules.
They are rules, and I see them as such. And I'm trying to understand them, but I also know that we should first start doing them and then the understanding comes after, right? That's the level 2. I'm still at the level 1.
And one of the things I think about is maybe translating mitzvah gets us into trouble, because when we translate it, we say, oh, it's a rule. And then we have a negative connotation. Then the word rule, ooh, the condo association has rules. They're terrible. Or there are rules to get into this. They're awful. As opposed to just calling these actions mitzvot. Mitzvot are actions that lend holiness to our lives. Mitzvot are actions that, I'm looking at all of you, that create community. Mitzvot are. Okay, thank you, Najat. We love hearing from you. We love hearing from each of you. Mike, you are next. Mike Rosenthal.
Okay, well, in cultural anthropology, when societies were first starting to be formed, this is before religion, we had folkways. That's what made me think of what I want to say now. Folkways were how you do things because they were for the common good, because they help people get along. And from folkways, you get mores. And from mores, starts to sound like mitzvah already, but from mores, you get more codified rules of behavior. And from that, you get ethics. From ethics, you get law. Now, religions are all based on those, but they were there before there were religions. And then we had religion starting, and then we each believe what we believe. But they're all based on this structure of society.
Or how, right, so how we structure society. So interesting. Yeah. Thank you to all the anthropologists. Thank you. Dr. Karp.
Well, Dr. Bob, this is a lot lighter than what Mike said. It relates a little to what Renee said. I had a wonderful Talmud teacher in Brooklyn, a Hasidic fellow. He was Rabbi Akiva Greenberg, but actually his story was much more interesting. He was Kenneth Greenberg, the son of a minor Canadian gangster who was always on the lam from the cops or maybe the other gangsters, other Jewish gangsters. He was like a bookie. And he ran away to join the Hasidim. And it's such a wonderful story. Like,
Yeah.
kids were to join the carnival. He
Is there a
ran-
movie about him? It sounds great.
well, he went on and got a PhD in sociology and was so forth. And he has wonderful stories, and he was a wonderful teacher, unfortunately no longer living. Just all sorts of stories. And he said that, you know, Judaism is really an Asian religion. And actually what Randy was talking about was a Derek Sadik, that when we observe, we put ourselves on a path to righteousness. And it takes us so that it's not an intellectual decision. Well, today I'm going to this and today I'm going to do that. And that you see that in this course, this is, I almost define Buddhism this way, the paths of righteousness, and Judaism as this Asian religion with its monarchies and its castes and several other things that we sort of have sort of slid away, and we do that. And John Gager, who simply, if you're a university new, is a wonderful person, who was actually a freedom writer in 1992, 1963. I didn't know that, but he wrote a book called Rethinking Paul, in which he described the Christian ethic of faith as a path to righteousness that allowed non-Jews to join a monotheism. That was his idea, in describing how what he assumed Paul was trying to do, rather than what is so much a part of Protestant theology. The difficulty is that if you have a purely faith-based, it can be quite a difficult problem for people who grow up in evangelical Christian families. Catholics seem to be able to bridge this pretty well. Bob Friedman and I discussed this, and I saw that in the Catholic community that I worked in for my. They can bridge it pretty well. Well, the church provides us with the ethos, and we can follow that ethos, and what we believe is our own business. So it's an advantage. It's a terrific advantage in Judaism not to be taught necessarily have that faith base, but it can be a limitation too, because sometimes there's this need for a faith that is unyielding and reassures you.
And yeah, I mean, look, thank you for that comment. I'm going back to Elliot with the faith that reassures you piece, and his story, and you being around at the death of some children as well, and thinking about I don't even need to be present at the death of a child to know that I'm living post Shoah. We're all living post Holocaust.
Yeah.
So we've all been there for an ultimate human caused tragedy. So yeah. So maybe we need the faith or the community, that the community of faith that is wrapped up in how we live Judaism, sort of to heal us, to let us take that next step. I want to go to page 50. We have so much to do. Zman katzar melacha meruba. Suzanne, don't let me end tonight without talking about timing for classes in the future. Okay. So I'm going to read this part out loud that he bolds. Usually I treasure the plurality of voices emanating from Sinai. Do you know what he means? That, you know, where so many different Jews can say, I stood there at Mount Sinai when revelation occurred, and we each heard something different. Gila and Myra didn't hear the same thing at Mount Sinai, but metaphorically, they both stood there. So we believe in the Midrash that each of us stood there. And some of us maybe believe that there is the voices at Sinai where God commanded you to do these mitzvot. Or like Bob's patient, God commanded that Hasidic young man to learn, to study. And someone else is, God commanded me to have a chavruta or 5 of them and keep learning. Or there's no command from God. There's just the pull of community that has me do mitzvot. So he's going to continue. As I welcome the revival of serious God talk, which has taken place in recent years among American Jews, which by the way, it certainly did in the 90s and the 2000s. Feminists, naturalists, mystics, rational theists, and learned atheists are once more sharing the benefit of their thought and experience more widely. We've even begun to bring Torah into dialogue with the highest achievements of modern culture, science, art, and philosophy, the profession's new wisdom about the self. Now, as ever, there is no purpose in seeking consensus in this endeavor, no possibility of achieving it. Point remains the conversation. God talk, too, is part of the covenant after all, right? It's at the beginning of the 10 Commandments. A need of the spirit in which Jews have too long and too often ignored. Judaism, and not only we ourselves, have been poorer for it. All the rabbis that were trained at the Jewish Theological Seminary, I think before the 1990s, maybe took 1 class in theology. And then it was, now go learn Talmud. And what he's saying is it's good. It's good that we're starting to talk about God. It's good we're starting to have communities that talk about God. And also, maybe we're suffering from a time of less observance. Less people trying on mitzvot. So I wonder as a community, and I actually don't think we need the answers now, but think about in our community, taking God out of it and saying, we want to do mitzvot either because someone believes there's a God commanding us, or we think this is a folk way, or we think this is a way of building a faith community or just a community. How might we pull more people into wanting to try on a mitzvah? The mitzvah of study, the mitzvah of prayer, the harder ones, the mitzvah of trying kashrut, Ellen, the mitzvah of trying to add to their prayer life or their prayer garb with talis or tefillin. So if you could think about that for me and email me or take me out for coffee, I'll pay for the coffee, to talk about ways that we can invite more people into a conversation, not just about mitzvot, but a doing of them. And now I want to go to this last piece on 145. I spoke about it in shul, I think last week, about love. About my Dvar Torah really was about all of what links all of the commandments in Kedoshim in the Parsha about being holy is love. Is finding a way to either love God, love Jewish community. He uses love of children as a example here, as a paradigm. And for those who don't have children, maybe you're still someone's child. So it could be about the love that your parents showed or had for you, or the love that you have for other human beings, for nieces or nephews. Mike, yeah.
Well, I was reading somewhere and I forget where now, but the man said he could summarize the entire Torah in one word: be kind.
Yes, Rabbi Akiva, be kind. You have to love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary.
Yes.
So where do you think, and I'm assuming people have read this, where do you think this idea of loving other human beings and loving God gets shown in our community, or how are we doing it, or how are we not doing it well enough? It's funny, we have one of our Hebrew tutors on, one of our B'nai Mitzvah tutors on, Gila, who's obviously not just a Bat Mitzvah tutor, but a giant of Jewish education. And I know, like, I was emailing with you, Gila, about like, oh, but our kids, we're having them all do Via Hafta and now hopefully Vayomer. Because there's like, what are the essentials that we want them to have basically when they get to Bar Bat Mitzvah? And it's like the week before, I want to be able to talk with the kids about Via Hafta, about love of mitzvot, love of other Jews, love of humanity. Where do you think the Jewish community has historically fallen down on that? And where are we doing well? And what else do we need to do to build a community that is based on this idea of Via Hafta? He uses the example of the love a parent has for a child, but I really think it's love. Does someone feel like we need to read one of his paragraphs as a start off, or have you already read it? Okay, does it, Mike, did you want to say something?
Yes,
Great.
I would rather wait and hear what you have to say now before I say anything.
No, I'm waiting to see what, if anyone has an answer of where are we doing well with this idea of love in the Jewish community? Where are we falling down?
Oh, okay, I can try.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we have love because we are helping our people who need help with buying food that they need, with finding resources financially that they need to be able to stay in their homes. And that those are major things. And also just being able to find somebody to talk to. Now, I was reading something online today. The Surgeon General of the United States has come out with the idea that there's a major epidemic now in loneliness,
yep.
and that you just talk to somebody. You walk down the street and somebody comes toward you, say good morning to them. That may make their day.
So that's where ways of building community is how we show love and talking to people.
Yes. And listen, more than talking to, is listening to.
Okay, anyone else want to talk about where we're doing a good job and where we need to do a better job? This idea that he's spoken about of love. Yeah, Rini.
Well, since we've joined the Jewish Center, I've learned a lot of things that the Jewish Center specifically does that I have a feeling a lot of members don't know about. For example, on Friday night, when there's food left over, or Saturday lunch, whenever, not Friday night, but Saturday lunch, it's donated to people who need food. And there are all the children in the Hebrew school, all the Chesed projects, all involve helping other people. And I think we should, as a community, I don't know if this is what you were going for, but I think as a community, if you highlight these things and encourage people, that they know about it, then people will get involved.
To do more acts of chesed.
Right,
Yeah,
people will do them either through the synagogue or by
or in
themselves.
their own, yeah.
But the synagogue is a good vehicle, a middleman for doing these things. And you're doing them anyway, that's my point. They're being done, but unless you go to Shabbat lunch and you ask, I was cleaning up, and I said, what happens to all this food that's left over? And they said, we donate it. And I thought, whoa, that's great, but who knows that unless you're there?
So, we just started actually last year with a group called Share My Meals. Do y'all
Yeah,
know Share My Meals?
I learned about it.
Yeah, and we kind of need more people to work on that. So if you're interested in helping with our Share My Meals fund, Share My Meals, the work. It's really a work where people need to come in on Sundays and package them, or even on Saturdays and package them. Suzanne, will you tell them about the burritos, and then maybe you'll get some more helpers?
So one of the things, another thing that we do that hasn't been publicized is on Sunday mornings, we make, depending upon what the need is, between 50 and 100 bean burritos for Princeton High School students who leave school at 2:33, whenever they do, and head straight into a restaurant job, and they don't have food. They're a bit food insecure to begin with. So we developed an idea of what we could provide them that they could snack on their way. So they're just bean burritos. And we have some great madrichim who have been amazing. But if somebody wants to take over making the beans at about 10 o'clock in the morning, we can make sure that all the stuff is there. But
Well, also those that's going to end, because Hebrew school will end and we won't have kids back. And
well, that's true. So this is the short period of time between when Hebrew school ends and
school
public
ends.
school ends.
Yeah, it's about 4 weeks.
Yeah. So
Okay, so again, the general question, Mike, I see your hand. I just want to see if anyone else wanted to say anything. The general question is, and it doesn't just have to be about these actions, where are we doing a good job showing love? And where's the Jewish community fallen down? And maybe the why we don't talk about love. I'm going to tell you the why. I mean, I feel like we have allowed the good Christian community to own love and to own that word, right? But it's really all over the Torah. It was all over last week's parsha. It'll be all over next week's parsha. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, v'ahavta et Adonai. Loving fellow human beings, loving God, it's like all over our tradition, and yet we somehow maybe are just, I don't know, scared of saying it. Love of other human beings. So how, I mean, we see like Christians talk about love a lot. And I think it's good that they talk about love. That's why I talked last week about it, but I'm going to keep talking. So where are we doing a good job? Where are we falling down?
Well, this is more of a confession, as if I may take confession. If anyone takes confession, you can take confession, Rabbi.
The whole
If you were a
screen, the whole
chaplain, by
Zoom.
the way, if you were a chaplain, you would actually
Yeah.
take confession if some point someone needed it. But if we tend to value intellectual activities, we're very proud of all the Nobel Prize winners. But when's the last time a Nobel, I mean, I'm not saying Nobel Prize winners don't work in food kitchens and do stuff, and I mean, maybe they do. I suppose no differently than anybody else. But we value the intellectualism, doctors. You keep calling me doctor. I would prefer you call me Bob, by the way.
Okay, I will call you Bob.
You can call me Hair Professor Bob Emeritus.
Okay.
If you want, but you know, the point is that we stress this enormously, and I have, you know, again, have a personal story that bugs me as well. It bugged me all my life, of a family next door when I was a kid growing up on 16th Street, Row House, Philadelphia, where the older son was really quite intelligent, quite bright, and quite immoral, actually, but he was, I think, third or fourth in his class at Central High School, had a mayor's scholarship, went to, was a whatever, and was lucky not to go to jail because he was cheating Medicare in his old age. But I knew that, but not too many. And his younger brother was the sweetest guy on earth, but he was learning disabled, and just ignored him, and they just ignored the accomplishments. And the more we do of the charity that we it has been called quote unquote Christian charity, when it's Jewish charity, Jewish love, of working with the disabled and working in the food pantries and organizing the food pantries and doing all those sorts of things, the better we are, and valuing kids who grow up doing that sort of thing. So when this child says, well, what does your children do? I said, well, actually Mike is a chef. I'm very proud of that. And, things like that. We have to take pride in the work that people do. I don't know if that makes sense. And I'm confessing my own personal, because I would just be happy up in my office rooms thinking about things and never doing anything. That's the truth, if you must know.
No, I mean, look, we, the Jewish people, are very intellectual. We, the Princeton community, are stars at it, right? We are. It's good. And what you are saying is, okay, and let's value kindness and chesed and seeing each person and seeing the humanity in each person.
Yeah.
Elliot.
And valuing it in our children, and our friends, and seeing the person who really does that as a livelihood of sorts, and it doesn't make great wealth, which is a whole issue here. You heard Linda speaking at the program on Sunday about the need for affordable housing. Be open to the fact that we have a terrible need in this community. It's a shame. It's shameful.
We have a need in this community, not just for what we call affordable housing, but even middle-class housing. Absolutely.
Well, it's shameful. It's shameful in Princeton that people who work here cannot afford to live here. And that's at all levels. Yes, right up to the middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another doctor? Yeah.
I have a question. How is the concept of seeking justice related to love? Because to me, they seem kind of mixed in together. How do we think about it?
So all over the Torah, and certainly in Deuteronomy,
Right.
you read the verse, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof.
Right.
If we love God and we want to show our love for God, then we will seek justice. And if we love fellow human beings, we will want there to be justice for them, and we will work for it. And that we will see our work finding justice as the fulfillment of that mitzvah of seeking justice, of having, and the little pieces of justice in last week's Parsha: pay a laborer the day they work, pay laborers fair wages. Don't take the opinion of a wealthy person over the opinion of a poor person, or a poor person over that of a wealthy person. It is all right. Like the V'ahavta, that one paragraph, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, love the Lord your God. How do you do it? Do it by, as the Reverend Barber said last week, do it by making sure everyone gets out and votes. Do it by making sure everyone has healthcare. Do it by making sure you can show ways to love God. You can have other ways. And by the way, I want to also say to you, it's not only the chesed stuff. If you are someone who has never put a talit on, come to my office and I will show you how to put a talit on. But if you are someone who's never put tefillin on, there's an incredible intimacy in wearing the Torah. And if you've never done it, come try it. It's not, we say one of the ways to love God is to do all of the mitzvot that are part of chesed and of seeking justice. And also the other mitzvot as well. Mike, you have another word for us.
Yes, there's another concept of called tough love. So, for example, if you're a parent and the child is supposed to do something and didn't do it, or they did something they weren't supposed to do, you correct them. Let's say you were supposed to go on a trip down to the seashore. Well, you didn't do this, so we're not gonna go this week. So when you do what you're supposed to do, we'll go.
Out of my purview, knowing like how to answer you on that. I know I've heard of it. And I know that usually it's talked about with parents who have children that struggle with alcohol or drugs. And I know that that has been kind of rebuffed in that community. So I don't know what to say. If anyone else wants to respond, idea of tough love.
We have, when our kids were little, like, we got a book called How to Talk to Children So They Will Listen, and How to Listen to Their Children So They Will Talk. Else, I want to raise their hand on that. It's a yellow book, and it goes about ways of alternatives to what you described. So you're giving positive reinforcement to what they do well, and
Is anyone losing Bob? I can't hear him.
Yeah, I'm losing him.
Find the right pathway.
All right, Bob, we can't hear you. Do you want to jump off and jump back on?
Am I unmuted?
No, you're just,
okay.
you have bad
Okay,
Wi-Fi.
can you hear me? Okay, there's a yellow book. It's a yellow book called How to Talk to Their Children So They Will Listen, and Listen to Their Children So How They Will Talk. And I won't tell the story again. Sorry, you'll have to catch me and have me tell you. And it's really about positive reinforcement and the proper negative reinforcement. And in any case, it got so bad that all we had to do was show them the book. And they do something wrong, and we'd hold the book up and say, "Oh, no, don't tell us any of that stuff anymore. We'll do the right thing." It was like,
I want to ask a question, and maybe you could put it to me in the chat, or are there any people here who would not prefer, who would prefer, or in addition want to do some learning during weekdays, not in the evenings? It could be, yeah, great. And if there are days of the week that work for you, and do you prefer Zoom or do you prefer in person? Either of you?
I prefer in person, but doesn't matter what day.
Same with me. The date, I'd have to figure out. And save.
Okay, so because I'm planning on next calendar year, wanting to teach not just this class, but other classes as well. And I want to do some during the day. And also keep some in person, some not in person. If there are, I love this curriculum, and I'm planning on continuing it in the year 2, but I'm also looking at some Hartman stuff, and I'm happy to also, I don't want to get in the way of the Talmud class that already happens, the Bible class that already happens. So if there's specific other things you'd like to learn, Midrash or topical pieces, please let me know offline. And if you'd like to come and do a mitzvah inventory, which is, let's sit and have a cup of coffee outside and talk about what are some mitzvot you do now that are working for you, and what mitzvot do you want to add? I'd be happy to do that. And hopefully save Tuesday nights next year as well for a night to learn together. And
Rabbi, if you choose to do during the day, some people who may have commitments may, like if you can do a hybrid, that would be wonderful. Zoom as well as in person. And Zoomers knowing that they might be limited in their participation, but at least they can be there somewhat.
Yes, we have that set up for Bible Care uses that setup.
Okay, so that would be great, so that if, all you retirees are working, that you can come and join anyway, so.
Great, thank you. Eleni, you want to say a word about Shavuos?
Well, there are a bunch of us planning for the Tikkun Leil Shavuot with Rabbi Mero and Neil Lidd and Linda Oppenheim and Barbara Abramson and Bob LeBeau. And the idea is that there'll be a very rich program. There'll be a kids program and dinner, and after dinner, a brief, likely to be an hour-long long program where we hear from 5 to 6 of our fellow congregants about how Torah has sparked them in their lives. Suzanne has chatted me privately asking me who Neil Litt is. That's a great question, and I'll answer it.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to out you. And happily, one of our speakers is here tonight. Sam will be one of our speakers, and we have a number of others that are coming together, and it should be a really fun evening of exploring, really learning from each other how we've been sparked by Torah, and there will be opportunities for the folks who are attending to also share in smaller groups. Yeah, so thanks for
Great.
asking.
Thank you. And that's on the 25th. And we think there's also going to be, because, I want to say it's mind, body, soul. And, Jews are gastronomic, right? We eat. So we're also going to engage in some cheesecake making and then cheesecake eating throughout the Shavuot festival. And don't be a naysayer to how exciting it can be to make a cheesecake with all the ingredients there for you, and then be able to eat the work of your hands.
Of everybody's hands.
Everyone's hands, right? Everyone's hands. We're all going to make some for everyone. Yeah, it's not your own to take home. It's for the community. Yes, Ellen.
So I'm going to just go back. I'm sorry I didn't jump in earlier. I want to go back to love.
Yes, thank you.
This past Sunday with my littles who are pre-K and kindergarten students, we made mezuzot. So of course we recited the Shema and we spoke about V'ahavta. And of course we started with you shall love God with all your heart, with all your might. And one of the students added, and with all your soul. So I felt like, wow, they're getting it from somewhere. But after the whole discussion about loving, during the free play time, one of the little girls was taking small pieces of paper, drawing pictures on them and writing, I love you, and handing them out to the students. And I think the lesson is that we need to start with these little guys, teaching them about caring and love, and it works.
No, but they need to teach us. What would it be?
They do need to teach us. I just,
oh my God.
You should have seen the smiles on the as she was handing them out. Look what, they were like, she made little hearts and wrote, I love you on them.
And
so we could take a lesson from them.
Yeah. And I want to connect that to something that Mike just said, which is like, how many people in our community, in our Jewish community, there are 500 families who are members of the Jewish Center. During the course of the year, we try to call some of them around holidays, but what if we grew our Chesed committee to letting people know, oh my God, we love you all. And what if we could do that in concrete ways? Let me just say, we're about to have a family that's about to have a baby next week. So you're going to get an email it's their 5th baby, by the way. Yeah, it's awesome. You're going to get an email that says you want to be part of our meal train. Everyone knows what meal train is? Everyone knows meal train?
Well, I got a notice about volunteering for it.
Yeah, so meal train means everyone in the shul is going to get a note saying, hey, we got a family with a new baby in the community and 4 other children. And we think as a community, we want to show them some love. And the way we're going to show them some love is by feeding them. So sign up to deliver dinner to them once in the next month. Cook for them or buy them dinner. They're not in financial need. They're in need of our love because they're going to be busy. So I hope when you get the email, you'll sign up and make some food for them. And I just want to say back to Eleni, yes, I will do that, Eleni, to what you texted me. And I have an appointment at 8:15 to talk to that young lady. I also want to give you one other thing, which is, every summer for the last 8 or so, I've gone to Jerusalem to study. Now, I do miss going to Jerusalem to just hang out and eat shawarma or falafel, but I go to a program of the Hartman Shalom Hartman Institute. And it's just really so wonderful to be with 180 colleagues and friends and to sit and learn the material. But the Shalom Hartman Institute also has a program for lay people. And so it is the last week in June, and it's 1 week of really intensive studying. And if you might be interested in traveling to Israel and really doing some high level, interesting, heartful learning, let me know or just go into their website and look for the community learning or let me know. And I know we have one other person in the community who's going to go this summer. Also, Myra last year went to the conservative yeshiva in Jerusalem. Amazing opportunity to go there and study Torah as well. I hope I see many of you tomorrow night, and Leatrout.
I just want to.
Thank you.
Oh, and I want to say one more thing, which is Tisku. Let me write it out to everyone. I do hope that you'll come and have conversations about what mitzvahs are working for you and which mitzvahs you want to try on.
This is the last session, or is there one more?
Last for now. And
For
then,
now, that's what I meant.
yes. Tiskula mitzvot, which means may we all be privileged, not you all, we all be privileged to do many mitzvot. Whether that be redeeming a captive, bringing about justice, lighting Shabbat candles, putting tefillin on, all mitzvot, tiskula mitzvot, may we be privileged to do more and more mitzvot. If you need some books to read over the summer, I definitely recommend this book that we just read from, Taking Hold of Torah, Eisen. You can buy it online pretty inexpensively. And I'm interested in reading Heschel with people. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know. And thank you so much, everyone.
And
Thank
thank
you.